There are almost 200 nations on the planet, and every one of them has some stunning trivia you need to hear about. From the happiest language on Earth to the highest ATM, I'm Mike with List 25, and today I'm counting down 25 interesting facts about every nation on Earth. Or at least 25 of them. We're List 25, we can't do every nation in one list, you should know that. 25. The official anthem of Ladonia is a stone dropping into water. The Paris Olympics are right around the corner, and that means a lot of podium celebrations, with a lot of national anthems being played. Most of these sound, well, pretty similar. That's why it's a shame that the micronation of Ladonia isn't officially recognized as a country. If it were, then the sound their winning athletes would hear would be a stone dropping into the water, accompanied by a haunting choir-like vocals. Now that would have me rooting for a country. 24. The largest city is in China. What is the biggest city in the world? Well, if you answer Tokyo, then 1, you're partly right, and 2, you were not listening to the title of this entry. But while that's true when it comes to pure population, it's not the largest prefecture level city, meaning how big a city is within the official city limits. When it comes to that title, the award goes to a place called Naqchu in China. Incredibly, there are over 89 townships, 25 towns, and over 1,200 villages within the city of Naqchu, which spans over 170,000 square miles. 23. Falkland Islands has the most sheep per capita. Are you a fan of sheep? Well then, boy, do I have the perfect place for you. In the Falkland Islands, each person could take 100 sheep and still have more than 150,000 to spare. That's because the population is so tiny. Only around 3,200 people actually live on the territory located in the South Atlantic. Citizens are heavily outnumbered by sheep, with that number being around 490,000. But even sheep are outnumbered by another animal, penguins. That's right, waddling around next to sheep on the Falkland Islands are around 1 million penguins. That sounds like quite the Happy Feet sequel. 22. Iceland has no army and is the most peaceful country. There's a reason why no country calls on Iceland when it gets into a conflict. It's because Iceland doesn't actually have an army. Their entire military police, if it can actually be called that, is pacifist, meaning non-violent. They're kept safe by their NATO membership, but what could NATO possibly use it for? The country allows other countries to use its land to station troops and equipment, but even this was a controversial issue in Iceland. As one of the least popular European countries, with beautiful scenery and a super fast growing economy, to be honest, I can see why they want to keep flying under the radar. 21. Brazil got its name from a tree called pau-brasil. Ever wonder where countries get their names from? Well, in the case of Brazil, it can be traced back to a single tree, the Pau-Brasilia enchinada. With a red-brown bark that can grow up to 15 meters, this tree has played an important role in Brazil's history. In English, the tree is known as Brazil wood, and it was first noticed by Portuguese colonizers in the 16th century who quickly began using it to extract red dye for textiles. This became one of the most profitable commodities for the Portuguese Empire and was enough to earn the area the name Terra do Brasil, which was later shortened to, just Brazil. 20. The happiest language in the world is Spanish. How on earth would you go about comparing how happy one language is compared to another? Well, one way to do it is to judge something called the positive bias, or technically something called the Pollyanna principle. Basically, that means whether or not a population is likely to remember things in a positive way or the negative one. Next time someone's telling a story, count how many times they use the words like good, great, or amazing. Or if you're from a younger generation, they might use things like lit or on fire or whatever. We need to bring back on fleek. Anyway, using this basic idea, a study carried out in 2015 found that out of the 10 biggest languages on the planet, the one with the most positivity bias was Spanish. It must be all that sunshine they enjoy. 19. The driest place on Earth is the McMurdo Dry Valleys. Farmers complain when it hasn't rained for a few weeks, and for good reason. One bad drought can be catastrophic for the entire food supply. Well, imagine if it didn't rain for 6 million years. That's the case for the McMurdo Dry Valleys in Antarctica. Anytime clouds are on the edge of rain, everything here gets swept up by strong winds and dragged further into the continent. That doesn't mean it's nice and warm at all, though. The average temperature here is -4 degrees Fahrenheit. No wonder this place is pretty much only visited for scientific experiments. Fun fact, last time I checked, I think we had -2 subscribers from Antarctica, which means people subscribed, went there, and unsubscribed while they were there. It's kind of incredible. Hello, scientists watching from Antarctica, who are clearly just unsubscribing. Rude. 18. Greenland can't join FIFA because of bad weather. For any aspiring soccer players in Greenland, the World Cup isn't a realistic dream, and it's all because of bad weather. Well, okay, not entirely. Because it's an autonomous territory of Denmark, Greenland isn't eligible to be a part of FIFA. But even if it were independent, the chances of competing for a World Cup are pretty low. There aren't any football grounds in the country considered adequate for professional play, mainly because the ground is permanently frozen, meaning grass barely survives. There are currently 5,500 registered players in Greenland, but their clubs are forced to use artificial grass or gravel pitches. Gravel, that sounds miserable. 17. In Bulgaria, nodding your head means no. You would think that a nod of the head is a universal signal for yes. However, ask a Bulgarian and they will furiously shake their head up and down while disagreeing with you. You see, in Bulgaria, this gesture means the opposite. And the reason is actually a fascinating one, dating back to when the country was occupied by the Ottoman Empire. You see, back then, religious Bulgarians were often held captive and forced to give up their beliefs under threat of death or torture. The military would press a sword up against their necks to provide a little incentive. However, this backfired in a major way. True believers weren't afraid of death, and they would shake their heads up and down against the sword to sacrifice themselves. That's how it transformed into a gesture meaning defiance, resistance, or more commonly, the word no. 16. Armenia was the first country to make Christianity an official religion. Speaking of religion, did you know that Armenia's Christian roots can be traced back all the way to 301 CE? A man named Saint Gregory the Illuminator set out on a mission to, well, illuminate the kingdom of Armenia. He only had to convince one man, the king, Tiridates the Great. But to say that task was difficult would be an understatement. To start with, Gregory was imprisoned for his beliefs, thrown into a 14-foot wide dungeon and kept there for over 13 years. Then his luck turned around. The king fell severely ill, and out of desperation, he summoned Gregory, who was amazingly able to cure him. He was so happy that he converted to Christianity. That's one very elaborate way to get out of a prison sentence. 15. Tasmania has the cleanest air in the world. Air pollution takes the lives of over 6 million people around the world every year. If you live in a big city, take a look at an air quality report and you might be shocked. New York, Toronto, LA, all rank in the top 20 most populated in the world. To get really fresh air, you need to get away from the hustle and bustle. And the best place to do that is Canuck in Tasmania, the southernmost island of Australia. According to atmospheric scientists, the air in Canuck is the cleanest in the world. It even provides scientists with a baseline to measure other parts of the world against. I mean, can you imagine stepping outside and breathing in the best air on Earth? It's great. Well, alright. Not here in Florida, I guess. I wonder how ours is. 14. Rwanda has the world's highest representation of women in parliament. Here in the US, almost 1/3 of members in the House of Representatives are women. But compared to Rwanda, we still have a long way to go. Over there, 61% of the parliament are women, more than any other nation. That's partly because the 2003 Constitution guarantees at least 30% of elected positions must be given to women. Unfortunately, studies have found that women in Rwanda still face many problems, from higher expectations for domestic work to sexism and violence. It's showing that representation is a start, but there's plenty more work to fight for women's rights. 13. No one is born as a citizen of Vatican City. Living inside the Vatican is one of the most exclusive residencies in the world. At the moment, there are around 800 people inside the walls, an area that covers less than 1/5 of a square mile in total. Surprisingly, these people do have permits, passports, and citizenship. Vatican passports are only given to people working directly with the Holy See, meaning the Pope. Meanwhile, citizenship is reserved for cardinals and important diplomats. However, it's not actually possible to be born as a citizen. Why? Because there's no hospital there. Luckily, the nearest one is about a 5-minute drive, so no need to go off and look for an inn or a manger. And actually, do you want another interesting fact? Liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing really helps the channel grow. Also, don't forget to check out our socials. 12. In Italy, there's a free fountain of wine. Good wine is an indulgence many of us can't afford too often. For the residents of the Italian commune of Caldari di Ortona, though, that's never a problem. Since 2016, there's been a Fontana del Vino in the town, which literally translates to fountain of wine. And that's not even the best part. This fountain is free and open to everyone. It marks the end of a famous walking trail where tourists can fill up plastic cups provided. People are trusted not to abuse the gesture. Although I'm not so sure about trusting tourists with unlimited wine. 11. A monument in Russia is dedicated to mice. Statues are usually reserved for war heroes, political activists, or sports stars. So then, why is there a huge statue of a mouse in Russia? It sits outside the Institute of Cytology and Genetics in Novosibirsk, Siberia. Students are greeted every day by a towering mouse wearing spectacles and knitting a model of the double helix, a foundational part of modern science. It's a commemoration and appreciation for the part that mice have played in advancing science. And if you want to know the shocking number of mice and rats used each year in research, it's 120 million. So, maybe they deserve a little more than just a statue. 10. The highest ATM in the world is in Pakistan. Why is it whenever you need to get cash, you just can't seem to find an ATM? Well, the next time you complain about not finding one in your city, just know this. There's an ATM 15,396 feet in the air in Pakistan. And for perspective, that's higher than the Matterhorn in Switzerland. The machine can be found right at Pakistan's border with China and has earned itself a Guinness World Record. It's actually now become a tourist attraction in its own right. Beyond the novelty, though, the ATM can be used for withdrawals, checking balances, and paying bills. Just make sure your account doesn't get frozen up there. Sorry. Oh no. 9. Scotland is home to the shortest street in the world. This street would be sure to confuse Google Maps. Located in the town of Wick in far north Scotland, Ebenezer Place is very easy to miss. The entire length only runs 6'9", barely enough to fit a tall person lying flat. And there's only one space for a single address. 1 Ebenezer Place. That belongs to the restaurant of McKay's Hotel, which wraps its building around 2 adjoining streets, River Street and Union Street. I bet that must be a nightmare to find parking on. 8. A restaurant in Spain that's been operating since the 1700s. Anyone who's worked in hospitality knows how volatile the industry can be. One minute a restaurant is the hottest place in town, and the next, it's closing its doors. If you want advice on opening a place of your own, well, just ask the owners of Sobrino de Botín in Madrid. They've been open for almost 300 years, making it the oldest restaurant in the world, so they must be doing something right. Just as impressive is their wood-fired oven, which according to the owners has been burning that entire time, even throughout the pandemic. Botín gets a mention in Ernest Hemingway's famous novel, The Sun Also Rises. And today, you can order exactly what Hemingway writes about: roast suckling pig and Rioja Alta wine. Completely unrelated, but has anyone actually found cheap tickets to Madrid recently? 7. The country of Tuvalu makes millions from leasing its internet domain. Have you ever noticed that the streaming platform Twitch doesn't use the domain .com? Instead, it's twitch.tv. Unlike .com, which stands for commercial, which falls under US jurisdiction, .tv belongs to the tiny Polynesian country of Tuvalu, about 2,000 miles east of Australia. With a GDP of just $66 million, Tuvalu ranks last out of any country in the world for economic output. That's why it turned to an unconventional income stream, renting its internet domain .tv for $5 million a year. Right now, there are over 430,000 websites listed using the domain, and most of them probably have no idea where Tuvalu even is. 6. Inmates at a Malawi prison were nominated for a Grammy. You know, in award shows, when an award is accepted on behalf of another artist, usually the winner has another commitment, like a performance. But imagine if they were sitting in prison. That was almost the case for the Zomba Prison Band, who in 2015 were nominated for a Grammy in the category of Best World Music Album. All of the band members are prisoners and still serving time at a high-security facility in Malawi, Africa. The band was funded by a non-profit, which gave them the chance to buy musical instruments and production equipment. Unfortunately, though, they didn't win the award. However, for many, it was proof that people really can change if given the right opportunity. 5. In Egypt, it's rude to ask for salt during a meal. What's the easiest thing to add to your dish to boost the taste? Well, salt and pepper, of course. In Egypt, adding either of these is a no-no. And the reason is very simple. If you're out at a restaurant and grab the salt and pepper, it sends a message that the chef didn't do their job right. It's even more insulting for home cooking. In Egypt, they are so proud of their food that they think it should be eaten exactly as served. I guess it's the same feeling as making a nice steak and someone ruins it with, ketchup. 4. The weekend in Iran is Thursday and Friday. There is no better feeling than getting off work on a Friday, ready for the weekend. That's the whole reason TGI Fridays is the thing. Well, in Iran, that feeling comes a little earlier, on Wednesday. That's because the 2 days off are usually Thursday and Friday. Why? Well, Friday is seen as the day of worshiping, according to the Quran. So you could say that in Iran, they really do thank God that it's Friday. 3. Fijians raise their eyebrows as a way of saying yes. Did you think the Bulgarian head shake was a strange way of saying yes? Well, wait until you get a load of this. In Fiji, all it takes is an eyebrow raise to communicate. For instance, say you ask someone if they're ready to grab a bite to eat. A strain of the eyebrows doesn't mean they're suspicious about the idea, it means they agree. Now that I can get on board with. 2. Don't clink glasses in Hungary. Unlike the rest of the world, Hungary doesn't celebrate an occasion by clinking glasses together, and there's a very good reason for it. It dates back to 1849, when 13 Hungarian revolutionaries were executed by the Austrian Empire. During the executions, Austrian military officials were apparently gorging themselves with beer and clinking glasses to congratulate themselves. As a marker of rebellion, the Hungarian forces promised not to clink glasses for another 150 years. The expiration date on that passed in 1999, but many Hungarians still refrain from clinking out of respect. 1. The word Canada comes from the Huron-Iroquois word Kanata. When dealing with two different cultures, some things are bound to get lost in translation. In Canada's case, it meant naming the entire country something completely wrong. The name Canada was given by explorer Jacques Cartier, who first laid claim to an area for the French. He got the name from a word from two young people from the local Huron group, who told Cartier that the area was Kanata. However, what they were actually saying was that the village or settlement was called Kanata. Of course, Cartier didn't know any better, and soon the name stuck. Oh, and by the way, that village was where modern-day Quebec is. And you know what? That's not the only interesting history of nations. Did you know that Australia was once known as New Holland? That's because it was actually the Dutch, not the English, who were the first Europeans to explore the continent. Or how about the fact that you can actually walk from America to Russia? When the Bering Strait freezes over, you can use it to go from Alaska 2.5 miles over to Siberia. So for dozens more facts just like that about places, check out 25 startling geography facts right here. Check it out. We'll learn together about the world. Ow! Ow! Ow. That sucks. You know what doesn't suck? This video. Click it. Nailed it. Ow!